Hello everyone and welcome back to Beatley Tones Beatles channel. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me for this video and I hope you're all doing well. In today's video I'm going to be getting back into my deep dive review series, which I started ages ago and I haven't really got nearly as far with it as I would have hoped to have done by now. I've been slacking and that's the problem, and I'm hoping to change that today by doing a deep dive review into George's 1976 album 33 1/3. Now before I get into that, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who viewed and left comments on my anthology video. It's had nearly 22,000 views, which is more than any other video on my channel. So very grateful for that. Thank you so much for everyone getting involved in your insightful comments and all that, and it brought in a lot of new subscribers, so I wanted to say a big welcome to all the new subscribers. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, and I hope you enjoy the content here. And if you just stumbled across this video by accident and you're not subscribed, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Love to have you along for the ride. And while we're talking about subscribers, a massive thank you to everybody who has already subscribed to the new podcast show that I'm doing called Hands Across the Water with my good friends Andy Nichols and Carl Hand. Thank you very much for that. And if you haven't subscribed to that, please do. Please do. We've got a great episode coming this week where we each talk about discovering the Beatles, how we discovered the Beatles, and reminiscing about that and the songs that, you know, made us become Beatles fans. And it's a great episode, so please go over to Hands on the Water, subscribe if you want to. It'd be really appreciated, and there will be a link to Hands Across the Water down in the description box below for easy access to do just that thing. Okay, so my review, deep dive review series, I've got a method. It's not a perfect method, but it's the best that I've come up with so far. And that is that I will talk about every track on this album and give it a score out of 10, except if it's a cover version, and there is one on this album. And if it's a cover version, I'm giving it a score out of 7. And I know a lot of people don't agree with this method. They think that all songs should be equal. But the way that I view it is that, you know, the songwriting process is part of the process of making an album. And therefore, for me, if there's a cover version there, then that part of the album making process is missing. And therefore, a cover version is not worth as many points as a song originally written by one of the Beatles. That's my thinking on it. I know people have said in the comments on other deep dive reviews that I've done that they don't agree with that method, but because I've, you know, started off the series with that method, I've kind of got to carry it on now. Otherwise it's not fair to the reviews that I've done already. So when I've reviewed the album and given every song a score, we'll add up the total score for the album and then divide it by the number of tracks, 10 in the case of 33 1/3, to get an average score for the album. It's complicated, isn't it? Probably unnecessarily so, but we'll get the average score, and then what we'll do with it is we will plonk it in my league table of all the deep dive reviews that I've done so far, a table that I'm calling Beatley Tones Great Big Ranking Review Table, which would be an appropriate name if it was great and big, but unfortunately at the moment it's not. I think this is the 14th episode in this series, so the 14th deep dive that I've done. It will get bigger in the future, but at the moment it's a fairly small table, and it looks like this. So that's what we've got so far. So at the end of the video, we will plonk 33 1/3 with its average score in that table to see where it comes. And I think it's important to know that, because I think everybody wants to know whether I think that Extra Texture is a better album than Ringo the Fourth. So, well, they probably don't actually. In fact, most people don't give a toss, but that doesn't matter. That's what we're going to do, so let's get on with it. Okay, so before we get into the review, let's just have a look at the album itself. Here it is. That's the front cover, 1976 being the bicentennial year of the United States. And I think George there wearing bicentennial glasses to celebrate, looking very serious in them on the back cover, which has the track listing there. This is George's first album on the Dark Horse label. We'll talk about that later. That is the gatefold. A little bit of a wry smile there as George poses with that penguin, and on the other side a list of the other musicians that are on the album. Billy Preston there, Willie Weeks up there, and that's a picture there of George posing with the gnomes that we know live in Friar Park with his dad. And this here is taken from the architecture of Friar Park. It says two holy friars there, the monk sort of, you know, friar holding a frying pan with holes in it. Let's have a look at the vinyl quickly. That is the inner sleeve with the lyrics, and that is the other side of it. And here is the vinyl. This is side one. The first George album, as I say, on the Dark Horse label, with the Dark Horse label. That is side two. And I've got a CD as well, which comes out of this beautiful box set, the Dark Horse Years. This is the CD of 33 1/3. That is the back of it. And there's not much to show you here that's different from the album, but I'll just show you the CD because it's rather nice. And that is it. And I'll tell you a story about buying this album, because there's always a story, isn't there? There's always a story. I can remember the exact day that I bought 33 1/3, the album, the record of 33 1/3. It was my 17th birthday. And me and my mate Fraser, we took a bus up to Romford Market, which was about a 45-minute bus journey. But we went to the market because there was a record stall at the market who sold records that were cheaper than they were in the shops. And you know, back in those days, you know, even if it was like 50p cheaper than in the shops, it was worth, you know, a 5p bus ride to go and get it. So it was quite a long journey. We got the record because they weren't like a proper record store. You know, it was just a market stall. They didn't have like plastic carrier bags. They put the record in a brown paper bag, and on the way back to the bus stop, it absolutely threw it down. It was pouring with rain, torrential rain, and my record got absolutely soaked, and the brown paper bag just like disintegrated. So when I got home and the record sleeve, when I got home and the record sleeve dried out, the record was absolutely fine, but the record sleeve got absolutely soaked. When it dried out, it was kind of like that. It was like all wavy and bent, which I wasn't happy about that at all. But I started work at 16, and I used to spend a lot of my lunch times, because I was too young to go to the pub with other people that I worked with. I used to spend a lot of time in a record shop right near work, and I got quite friendly with the bloke that run the record shop, and he used to give me promotional displays that they had in the record shop once they'd finished with them, things that they would hang in the window or up in the shop or whatever. And I asked him if he had a spare cover from when they did the promotion for 33 1/3, and he went in the back and dug it out, and he did have one. So that is the cover that he gave me, rather than the cover that it actually came in. The cover that it actually came in, I stuck up on my bedroom wall. Well, that was an interesting story, wasn't it? No? Oh, okay. Well, I could edit it out, but I probably won't bother. Okay, let's get on with the review now. Okay, let's put 33 1/3 into context, because there always seems to be a bit of a backstory with George's album. So let's do that. So the sessions for this album started in May 1976. at George's home studio at Friar Park, and in fact the entire album, including overdubs, was recorded at Friar Park, and that was the first time that he'd ever done it. It was also, as I've already said, the first album on the Dark Horse label and the first to be distributed by A&M Records, or that was what the deal was in the first place. But George at that time in 1976 was still drinking really heavily, and consequently he caught hepatitis during the sessions, and the sessions had to be halted. They reconvened around August time 76 to finish the album. But George tried quite a few methods to get himself well again, like giving up drinking. That was a good idea. But also acupuncture as well. As I say, he did get rid of it, and the sessions continued. And we find from this album that in the main, George is in a much better place during this album than he was during the recording of Dark Horse and Extra Texture. The happiness with his life kind of comes over on this record. George produced this record. He wanted to co-produce it with Tom Scott, but Tom Scott was too busy. Tom Scott gets an assisting producer credit on this, but the main production is done by George, and a really good job that he does of this album as well. It is a great sounding album, and he's playing with some cracking musicians that I'll go through in a minute. But it is a great sounding album, and it's kind of interesting to think, what will Paul Hicks and his team do with this album when it comes round eventually to them remixing 33 and a third, because there doesn't seem to be a lot to be improved. There's a couple of places where George is a little bit too low in the mix, and I'm sure they'll fix that. But otherwise, this is a great sounding album. Now, the problem that occurred from the delay when George was ill was that he was late in delivering the album to A&M Records, and they were not happy about it. And he basically got a letter saying, give us the $1 million advance back, and we'll also take the royalties from this record. And George was having none of that, because basically, I think that the demands from A&M Records were more to do with the money that they'd lost on the other Dark Horse artists that had been signed to the label, like Splinter, Ravi Shankar, even ex-Wings guitarist Henry McCulloch was on the label, and they hadn't made a lot of money. Those records hadn't sold a lot. I think it was more about, we've made a bit of a mistake taking on this label. So basically, George settled out of court and took himself off to Warner Brothers, who distributed Dark Horse Records right the way through George's life. We know now that the distribution of Dark Horse Records is now done by BMG Music. Okay, let's go through the musicians that George chose to use on this album. Some familiar faces, some that he was playing with for the first time. So we've got Tom Scott on sax and flute. We've got Richard T on piano and organ. The brilliant Willie Weeks on bass. Willie Weeks played on other George albums like Dark Horse. Alvin Taylor playing with George for the first time on drums. Really great drummer, and the combination of Taylor and Weeks as a rhythm section, I think, is one of the tightest rhythm sections that George ever recorded with. We've got Billy Preston here. Billy Preston plays on 3 songs: Beautiful Girl, this song, and See Yourself. Billy was a hard man to pin down for these sessions, because at this time he was touring with the Stones, so it was difficult to get a day where he could come into the studio. But there was a day where the Stones were all at home and not gigging, and he took himself down to Friar Park and managed to lay down his bits in one day. David Foster on Fender Rhodes and clavinet. A familiar face in the shape of Gary Wright on keyboards and Emil Richard on marimba. The album was released on the 19th of November 1976 in the UK. I think it might have been a little bit about a week later or something in America. It got to number 35 in the UK charts, number 11 on the Billboard charts. Best showing worldwide was in Canada, where it got to number 10, got a gold disc in the US and a silver disc in the UK. George did a fair bit of promotion for this album, much more than he'd done for some of the others. He did a promotional tour of the US, which saw him make an appearance on Saturday Night Live, where he was there with Paul Simon, where they played "Here Comes the Sun" and "Homeward Bound," and they also showed the videos for both this song and Crackerbox Palace. He did stuff in the UK as well. Whistle Test was one of the interviews that he did, and several radio stations, etc. And he also did some promotion in Germany as well, where he mimed to the song, this song. So the Quiet One was being quite noisy about his new album, 33 1/3. Let's talk about the first track, "Woman Don't You Cry For Me." So the album kicks off with 2 or 3 cracks of Alvin Taylor's snare drum and that brilliantly funky bass line played by Willie Weeks, which carries on throughout this song and is really, really great. And, you know, the combination of those two things give this song a real funky feel, which is very appropriate for 1976 when the album came out, because disco was very dominant of the charts both here in the UK and in the US at that time. But of course, this is not a new song written for the disco era. This song was written in 1969 on the Delaney and Bonnie tour that George did back then, when he was asked to fill in on slide guitar for Dave Mason. And it was the first time that he played slide guitar or experimented with it. And the slide guitar on this song is just absolutely fantastic. And incidentally, there are no other guitarists on this album. George plays all the guitar parts himself, so both acoustic and electric, and a little slide guitar as well. And there's lots of it here. So, you know, this is a great way to kick off the album. Really, really like this track. As I say, it's got a great funky feel. You can hear alternative versions of this song, less complicated versions on the early takes volume 1. There's an acoustic version with no sort of slide guitar, just George and his acoustic, and there's also another acoustic version of this on the All Things Must Pass box set on the Outtakes album, where he does add slide guitar, but on an acoustic guitar, and you can really hear from that how complicated the slide guitar parts are on this song. So a great way to kick off the album. Love the track. I'm giving it 8 out of 10. So track 2 on the album is DearOne, and that is the only overtly spiritual song on this album. It's dedicated to an Indian Swami that George admired, whose name I've got absolutely no chance whatsoever of pronouncing right, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But when I say it's a spiritual song, it's not a spiritual song in a preachy way, but for me this song is a little bit of a dirge, and unfortunately it's the longest song on the album at just over 5 minutes, so it does drag for me a little bit. But George plays all the instruments on this, or almost all the instruments on this. He plays, obviously he sings it, he plays guitar, keyboards, and even hi-hat on this song. Richard T is the only other musician on this song, and he plays Hammond organ. But this is my least favourite song on the album. I'm going to give it only 5 out of 10. So track 3 is Beautiful Girl, and once again George goes back to unfinished songs in his in his little scrapbook for a song for this album. Beautiful Girl was first tried and demoed during the All Things Must Pass sessions, and you can hear it if you've got the box set on demo day 2. You can hear a demo of Beautiful Girl. He only had one verse for it then, but he had all the chords, he had the lyrics for one verse, but all the melody was already there. Now here we get a full band version. George on guitar and vocals, you've got Alvin Taylor on drums, Willie Weeks on bass, you've got Tom Scott on horns and Billy Preston on organ as well. So you know, a great feel for this song, a very summery feel for this song. And it's interesting that this song was sort of, you know, written in 1969 or 1970. At that time, the beautiful girl would have been Patty, but by the time it was finished, the beautiful girl in the song is obviously Olivia. This is a great song. It's got great guitar in it. You hear George's arpeggios playing throughout this song. The arrangement is subtle, but also on this song, something to notice about this song is there's no real chorus on this, no hook, but that doesn't detract from how great the song is. It's a really good song, and George plays a lovely slide solo in it. I'm giving this 9 out of 10. So track number 4 on the album is the utterly brilliant This Song, a really commercial pop song that was the lead-off single on both sides of the Atlantic, and it did absolutely nothing here in the UK. Absolutely nothing. Didn't make the charts. Only got to number 25 in the US on the Billboard Hot 100, which is probably a fairly poor showing for a song that got a fair bit of airplay. You know, it was on Saturday Night Live. Should have done better, really, because it is hugely commercial and catchy. Now, this song, you see what I did there? This song is obviously a kind of a comedic take on the court case that George went through in 1976, where he was accused of plagiarism by Bright Tunes, then owned by Alan Klein, as a little twist to the tale, of ripping off the melody of the Chiffons' He's So Fine for My Sweet Lord. He was found guilty, cost him a lot of money, but George, you know, smiles in the face of adversity and comes out with a song with, you know, quite witty lyrics. This song has got nothing tricky about it. This song ain't black or white, and as far as I know, don't infringe on anyone's copyright. And he goes on, this song has got nothing bright about it. And there's a great video for this song as well. Directed by Eric Idle. It's very funny. It's centered around the courtroom during the case. Jim Keltner is the judge, and towards the end of the video, you'll see the judge with a clown's nose. And it's a very amusing video. So if you haven't seen it, do go and watch it. Musically, this is a really great song. That thumping piano is supplied by Richard T. Billy Preston is on organ, George on guitar and vocals, and that fantastic sax solo obviously played by Tom Scott. A really strong song. The very last line of the lyric is, "Without you, there's no point to this song." And for that, well, not just that, because I think it's a brilliant song anyway, but for acknowledging that, George, I'm giving this song 10 out of 10. Track 5 and closing out side 1 is the excellent See Yourself. This is a song about self-reflection or self-judgment, and again, it's got its origins back in the 60s, 1967. We all know the story. The song was, inspired by when Paul was asked by a journalist whether he'd taken LSD, and he said, "Do you want me to tell the truth or do you want me to lie?" And they said, "We want you to tell the truth." And Paul said, "Well, if I tell you the truth, it's then your responsibility not to spread it." And the journalists are saying, "Well, you should have lied then if you didn't want it spread." So the opening, verse on this song is, it's easier to tell a lie than it is to tell the truth. It's easier to kill a fly than it is to turn it loose. It's easier to see the books upon the shelf than to see yourself, which is a really, it's a great verse. And there's another verse that goes, "It's easier to give a sigh and be like all the rest who stand around and crucify you while you do your best." And you could, maybe that's a little dig at music critics that had given George a hard time around that time. You could still apply that to the modern day with the invisible knuckle draggers, the trolls that we see on YouTube and other social media outlets. So it still applies. Now the song "See Yourself" is very keyboard orientated, both with electric keyboards and piano. It's Billy Preston on the acoustic piano that plays most of the melody of this song, but we've also got Gary Wright and George on electric keyboards, which is also very prominent in this song. The rest of the band is the core band for this album, with Willie Weeks on bass and Alvin Taylor on drums. It's a great song, See Yourself, really good lyrically, really good musically, and I'm going to be giving it 8 out of 10. The opening track on side 2, It's What You Value, another superb song. Musically, certainly, maybe not so much lyrically, but that doesn't seem to matter because it's so good musically. It really moves with a swing, mostly dominated by the piano riff played by Richard T, but underneath that is George's guitar as well, but the piano is definitely more prominent than George's guitar. Fantastic drumming on this from Alvin Taylor, especially with the cowbell. It's a real sort of groovy beat, which also, you know, helps it swing, and of course Willie Weeks' bass underneath that as well makes this song really musically first class. The song is about an incident with Jim Keltner where George wanted him to play on the 1974 tour, and he didn't want to do it, so George literally had to beg him, and eventually he gave in, and he said that, I don't want paying in cash, I want a new car. So George got him a Mercedes 450, and then when the other members of the band found out how Jim Keltner was getting paid, they had the ump. So even though they were being paid really well, for the tour, so George got this idea, it's what you value. Some value money, some value cars, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. So we ended up with a song that was basically about cars. The last verse kind of talks about a six-wheeler, which is, a racing car. George's interest in Formula One motor racing, was in full swing at this time. In fact, in 1977, him and Olivia spent the whole year sort of doing the F1 circuit rather than making any music. But I absolutely love It's What You Value. It's great. The other thing about it musically, there are 2 sax solos in this that are insanely good, really, really, really good. And underneath those, you can hear Alvin Taylor, switching up the drum groove, during these sax solos. Complicated stuff, but really good stuff. Love It's What You Value. It's 10 out of 10. So next up on the album is True Love, a cover of the Cole Porter song, and I'm pretty sure that the Beatles played this in Hamburg because the gigs that they did there, they had to play for so many hours. They literally had to play every song that they could think of, really, and I'm sure that they would have come across this song as part of the High Society movie. In that film, there is a dreadful version of this song sung by Bing Crosby, which is such a dirge and so slow and dreary. But George breathes life into the old dog here. There's none of that dreariness here. He turns it into an upbeat pop song, drenches it in slide guitar and keyboards and piano and drums, and it sounds great. He sings it really well as well. This is a cover version, as I've just said, so I can only give it a mark out of 7, but I can't find any fault in this song at all, so this is getting 7 out of 7, and that's that. So track 8 on the album is Pure Smokey, George's tribute to Smokey Robinson. And if you're familiar with the Extra Texture album, and in particular the song Ooh Baby, then you will recognise some very strong similarities between that song and Pure Smokey, because they certainly exist. And the reason for that is that they were written at the same time, and maybe George was kind of balancing up which one he was going to use. And it's a real shame that Pure Smokey wasn't developed further during the Extra Texture sessions so that it could have been included on that album, because its inclusion on that album would have made Extra Texture a much stronger album. It's funny how we always call it Extra Texture when it's actually called Extra Texture. Read all about it. Maybe it's because nobody really wants to read about it. But the inclusion of Pure Smokey on that album would maybe have lifted the number of good songs from 3 to 4 maybe if you're lucky. But George takes a different approach to his tribute song. Let's have a look at the first verse. The first verse says, "Throughout my lifetime I'd hesitate, I'd feel some joy, but before I show my thanks it became too late." And what he's saying here is, you know, if you love someone or you admire someone, then tell them while they're still here, while they're still alive. You know, when John died, you know, every Tom, Dick and Harry did a tribute song for him. Elton John did one, Queen did one, Paul Simon did one, even George did one, and Paul did as well. You know, why wait till someone has died to tell them that you love them or you admire them? It makes complete sense, doesn't it? And the song Pure Smokey is very, it's funky, but more than funky, it's very soulful. And obviously, you know, George is trying to sort of recreate that sort of Smokey Robinson Motowny feel with this song. And the tempo and the percussion played by Alvin Taylor is very integral to that, as is, you know, the keyboard parts, the twinkly Fender Rhodes played by David Foster and the organ played by Richard T, also very important in this song, as is the sax that kind of comes in and out throughout the song, is also very integral. As far as George goes, you know, great vocal, really soulful vocal on this song. And it gives us not one, but two guitar solos in this, and not slide guitar solos either. And there's one right near the beginning of the song and one in the instrumental break in the middle. And it's, you know, it's a little bit longer than the solos that George usually gives us. It's about 9 bars long. He normally sort of sticks to around 4 bars. And sometimes 5. But so some really soulful guitar playing from George on this track. He also name checks the Smokey Robinson song "You Really Got a Hold on Me" that the Beatles covered on with the Beatles in one of the verses. He sings, "And anyone who hears this voice so free, he really got a hold on me." So that's nice. George is remembering doing, you know, "You Really Got a Hold on Me" on with the Beatles. So Pure Smokey, really great track, and it's the start of a really strong 3-song ending to this album. So Pure Smokey for me is getting an 8 out of 10. So the penultimate song on the album is the totally wonderful Crackerbox Palace, a brilliant song, released as the second single from the album. Did absolutely nothing in the UK as usual. It did get to number 19 in the US Billboard chart, which is not a bad showing for a second single released from an album. I think that's an acceptable performance. But when I first heard the song Crackerbox Palace, I assumed that Crackerbox Palace referred to the world. Welcome to the world, the absolute loony bin that the world was in the mid-70s. Luckily, these days, the world isn't a loony bin anymore. Let's not go there. As for the actual meaning of Crackerbox Palace, there is a story. George was a big fan of the comedian Lord Buckley, and he met Lord Buckley's manager, Mr. Greif, who is name-checked in the song. And he told George that Lord Buckley's home was called Crackerbox Palace. And George thought, that's a great name for a house, and that's a great name for a song. And he made a note of it on his cigarette box, and he saved it for later. But Crackerbox Palace is a fantastic song, very poppy, very commercial, very catchy, very upbeat. And George's guitar playing on this song is absolutely relentless. Slide guitar throughout this song, double tracked in some places. And one of the takeaways from the whole 33 1/3 album is the return to form of George as a guitar player. I mean, anyone who doubts George's ability as a guitar player needs to be handed a copy of this album to listen to dispel that element of doubt. It really is a return to form. Another interesting part of the song is the drum groove, because it's in a very weird time signature. It's in 6/4, and sometimes it shifts into 7/4, which is unusual for a pop song, most of which are in straight 4/4 time, but not this one. And that sort of drum groove gives this song its kind of funky feel, as does the bass playing of Willie Weeks. There's also a really good sax solo from Tom Scott in this song, and of course George's singing is really good as well on this song. And it's, you know, it's got great video as well. If you haven't seen the video, do check it out on YouTube. It's very funny and there's lots of famous people in it. And the video starts off with a nanny pushing a pram around the grounds of Friar Park. And the nanny in this case is none other than Neil Innes, who is Ron Nasty from the Ruttles. And when we get to look what's inside the pram, it turns out to be, you know, a great big grown-up George Harrison, who, you know, sings the first line of the song, "I was so young when I was born." And if you're not invested by that as being the first line of the song, then you're probably not actually alive. You know, it's a brilliant song. It's a very funny video, so do check it out. One of my favourite songs on the album, and I can't give this any less than 10 out of 10. So the final track on the album is the absolutely gorgeous Learning How to Love You. And I really do think that this is one of George's best ballads of his career. Absolutely beautiful song, very soulful, very soulful. And it's as if, you know, working out the last song on the album, it's as if all the members of the core band said, okay, well, let's all show what we can do, because everyone seems to have a kind of a moment in the spotlight on this song. You know, George's vocals, are say, really soulful. He sings this beautifully. His voice is double tracked in some places, in other places he's harmonizing with himself. He plays an absolutely superb acoustic guitar solo in the middle of this song. And, you know, drummer Alvin Taylor, you know, his drumming is very, very subtle, very laid back, and very spacey on this song. At the beginning of the song, he's just playing a cross stick across the snare with a hi-hat, and then the wooden block as percussion there, and he kind of ramps it up a little bit after the guitar solo. Not when ramps it up is not the right word, but it becomes a little bit more boisterous, because he's then playing a full snare at that point. Willie Weeks' bass flutters in and flutters out, and just adds a much appreciated sort of soul-y feel to this song that I love. And the keyboards, played by David Foster, Richard T, just gorgeous throughout this song. And a little bit of sax at the end from Tom Scott. This is a great way to end the album. I really like the 3-chord drop at the end of the song, which makes it a great ending to both the song and the album. Learning How to Love You, as I say, it is one of George's best ever ballads, and I'm giving this one 10 out of 10 as well. So summing up, my main takeaway from reviewing 33 1/3 is that this album is a real return to form for George as a singer, a songwriter, and primarily a guitarist. A great guitar album is 33 1/3, and he plays some great stuff on this album, and this form will be carried on into his next album in 1979, the self-titled George Harrison album. But up to the point at 1976, I think that 33 1/3 is his best album since All Things Must Pass. But I'd love to hear what you think about this album. Please tell me down in the comments, do you like the album? Do you not like the album? Do you agree with my scorings for the songs, or do you think they're overly generous or not generous enough? Please tell me down in the comments. Tell me your favourite tracks on the album, your least favourite tracks on the album. Love to hear from you. As you know, I read all your comments and I will respond to all your comments. Okay, so the total score for 33 1/3 was 85 points. There are 10 tracks, and even I don't need Excel to tell me that the average score for the album is 8.5. So let's plonk it into Beatley Tone's great big album review table, which isn't that great or isn't that big either yet. There are only 14 albums reviewed so far, but we can see from the table that 33 1/3 has come in at number 4. Imagine is still leading the way, and but 33 1/3 is number 4 on the chart so far. I mean, this will change as I review more albums for sure, but we'll see how it fares over time when more albums are added. Okay, well, that is it from me. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you want to see other deep dive reviews that I've done so far, I will put an end card link to the playlist where all the deep dive reviews are, and you can watch them. Or if you just want to, search for one, just type in deep dive, and all the deep dive reviews will come up on the list, and you can pick the one that you want to see, and you can see from the table which ones that I've already done. Okay, well, as I say, thanks very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye bye.